North Star of professional wrestling, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. This is Wrestling is for Losers, a podcast that's not fake, it's predetermined.
Good evening, day, or morning, folks. Welcome to the latest episode 8 of Wrestling is for Losers. It is at this very moment that I realize I forgot to write my opening line for this episode. It's the first time that it's happened, so I am improvising at this very moment, and I will keep talking until something clever comes to me. Just kidding. I'm stopping now.
Perfect. Excellent. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Tonight on the show. That's what I always talk about.
Yes.
It's been kind of an interesting week for wrestling. We have a couple big stories, but otherwise things have been kind of tame, which makes sense. We're in the aftermath of pay-per-views on every brand, but CM Punk news, of course. And we've got an update to the ongoing controversy of what's going to happen with Roman Reigns' belts. I'm sure you know what that update is. But before we get to it ourselves, let's introduce my co-hosts. First of all, he's the guy that hasn't watched wrestling in 30 years, but now he knows everything there is to know about AEW, and I think might have watched his very first WWE show this century, Koltrane.
That's right, Boots. 33 years. 33 years since these eyes have glanced upon the titans of the turnbuckles, the heels from hell, and the badass baby faces. It's been AEW up until this point because Shoe Boots would not allow me to watch WWE.
I said he could anytime.
But now, this week, I was able to sit down, thanks to Texas Crazy Horse allowing it, and to watch WWE Smackdown. So I'm very excited. Did I like it? Did I hate it? Did I love it? What happened? We only one episode in, but I'm already starting to feel a possible preference on what might be the better show. I'm looking forward to talking about it, getting into it, diving into it on this episode. It's gonna be insane. I was able to watch WWE for the first time in 30 years, and it was pretty crazy. So looking forward to diving into that.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk about it either. But before we introduce our next co-host, Koltrane, could you do me a favor? Could you, for those of you viewing on video, could you hold your hand up to the screen?
Yes.
And could you take your thumb and just kind of close it so we can't see your thumb anymore? And now pretend you no longer have that thumb. You know what you have? How many matches were on 2 hours of SmackDown this week? Anyways, moving on.
Oh, snap. Woo! There it is.
Speaking of coming up short, he's our WWE residential lover. It's Texas Crazy Horse, everybody.
All right, first of all, that wasn't cool.
That's pretty good. Pretty creative.
Can you tell me how many matches were in Dynamite?
Not off the top of my head, but I could if you want.
You know why? Because no one watched it.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
Just look at the views.
Oof.
This week has been very boring for me because all my friends been playing Diablo, and I don't have it. So I've been watching a lot of wrestling. I even watched Dynamite. So that's how I know no one watched it. I am so excited to see what Koltrane thought. I'm going to tell you how I felt about the episode. I'm excited. And don't listen to anything Shu says because it's all going to be negative.
Well, we'll see about that. But either way, no matter who says what about anything, I think it was really fun. And I'm also very excited to talk WWE to you guys because we've been in deep with AEW for 2 months now. So this is going to be a fun change of pace. But before we get into SmackDown, this week's SmackDown, it is time for some news. And again, as I said earlier, not a ton of news this week, but there is a couple big tidbits. And there's not a whole lot to say about them other than they are big news. The first one, Koltrane, I got to tell you, we're keeping the streak going. CM Punk is still in the headlines.
Wow. This is a name I've heard every single week. I had no idea up until this point who this person is, what he looks like. All I've heard from you, Shoe Boots, and from Texas is that he's a star. He's a star.
He's a bona fide star.
He's a bona fide star.
Probably in many people's opinion, the best wrestler working, the greatest wrestler working today. People's favorite. And I would say that you probably get that buy-in from a lot of WWE fans as well. And I think we have one of them here on the podcast. But anyways, CM Punk was officially confirmed to be at Collision on June 17th, the very first episode, and it's assumed that he'll be on it moving forward. It's not just a guest appearance. But interesting reaction for those. Now, Koltrane,
Yes.
I do have a bit of an interesting question. Did you watch Dynamite in this first week that you were not required to?
I did. And the reason I watched Dynamite is that I watched Smackdown first, and then I went back to watch Dynamite to help with my comparison between the two.
Oh, you're really taking an academic approach.
I am taking this very, very seriously. I am. Because I'm gonna say some controversial stuff tonight. All right. There's gonna be some upset fans on one side or the other.
Okay.
It's gonna be controversial. So I wanted to make sure I did my due diligence, did my research, ready to go.
Sounds good. Well, I can't wait to either agree or hate you.
Yes.
So CM Punk was confirmed, and interesting, I'm sure you guys probably noticed, bit of a mixed reaction for the announcement. There was initially a pop, but there was some audible boos, and I think to the point that the announcers even acknowledged it, that there was some disgust in the audience that CM Punk was confirmed. What do you think about this, Tex?
Well, this is the Elite company, so you have a bunch. It's all the boos are their fanboys. That's all it is. And there's nothing. Once you see Collision, and you hear that crowd, then we'll know. And also, I watched the whole show. Boo or not, that was the loudest reaction of the night. It just shows, love him or hate him, he's a star.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Can I ask you a quick question here? I just so I look at MJF, right?
Yeah.
Great personality, huge guy, personality. Chris Jericho, the guy's a wizard, a literal sorcerer, right?
Yeah.
These are big people that are like larger than life.
Yeah.
As someone that hasn't, I don't know who CM Punk is, I don't know whatever. He looks like an average Joe. So my question is, what is it about CM Punk that makes him a star? Why is he CM Punk and in such high regard in the wrestling community?
Right. Well, first, I think Tex probably has a better answer than me on this because I was not watching wrestling during his WWE run. I have went back and watched a lot of the more famous moments, and I feel like I get it after seeing him on AEW. But my quick take would be that much like MJF, much like Chris Jericho, this guy's got it. He can rock it on the mic. His back and forths with MJF when they were feuding were amazing. I'm an Elite fanboy, as Tex described, but I love that he's coming back. And actually, my take on it as someone who loves the Elite and is happy to see him back is that the boos are hopefully more for what I was talking about a couple weeks ago about how I'm just sick of this controversy. Right? I'm sick of this guy. I want CM Punk to be on the headlines because he's on AEW, not because he's overshadowing it. So, and I do feel that this controversy, whether his fault or not, has done damage to AEW in the last 8 or 9 months. So I'm really looking forward to it to being over one way or another. But that being said, I do think he's great. He has good matches. He had some really unfortunate injuries last year. And they don't really seem related. Like you're going to probably see people saying he's injury prone. It does seem like just really bad luck to me. But Tex, what do you think?
I think you're right. If you remember, Koltrane, on your first episode of AEW, when you saw MJF, I believe he wasn't even having a match. He just talked.
Yes.
And you're just like, that guy, you can tell he's a star.
Yes, 100%.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And Punk was also, when he would go against these Undertakers and Triple H's, that guys coming up kind of get, they get lost and they can't hang with those guys.
Sure.
Him being a smaller guy, being able to not only hang, but bring the matches to another level. And he's also kind of an asshole.
Right.
And he comes across as one. He's not your company guy. He's kind of the stone cold, screw the system kind of guy. And people love it.
Yeah, and Stone Cold's actually a really good example. I know that you're beyond the name and maybe a picture of him. You're not very familiar with Stone Cold, but keep in mind, Stone Cold, I think to this day, is still considered the biggest drawing wrestler of all time.
Yes.
And has sold the most merchandise of all time. And his whole deal is like, I'm a dude from Texas that drinks beer. Right.
Yes.
So like you can have larger than life characters, but you can also have these real kind of like grounded in reality characters that can really take off. And I think it's about the right persona for the right person. And when it clicks, it bangs, you know?
Yeah. And I have a lot of Stone Cold gifs and memes of him slamming the beers and then drinking them. And then also I saw during WWE, I guess he's got some kind of nice reality show, the Stone Cold Family or something like that.
I haven't seen it,
exactly. There's more on that later.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do an episode where we review one of those. I don't know.
Right. Perfect. Yes.
All right. Well, yeah, one way or another, he's coming back. And that pop was interesting to me. But I think at the end of the day, people are generally going to be excited to see him. He's having his first show in Chicago, so I think he's coming back to huge fanfare, which will help set the tone. I'm excited. I hope to see him have some good feuds. And you know, my pie in the sky dream is that behind the scenes, he can do whatever he needs to bury the hatchet with the Elite so we can get that CM Punk Omega match that I think would be killer. But we'll see.
So one thing I heard from a little birdie, initials JC, is they wanted to keep. You would imagine they wanted to keep this
Jesus Christ
for the episode. No, close.
That's who it was. Yes, that's correct.
Close. The reason most people believe they announced it last week is because the ticket sales are awful for Collision. Some markets only selling 500 tickets in a week.
500 tickets? I think that is a gross overstatement. I have personally.
JC says it. I believe it.
Oh, JC, Jim Cornette. Took me a second there.
Oh, all right.
So
it's not Jesus Christ. He's not commenting on wrestling ticket
polar
sales.
Opposite.
I see. All right. All right. I think that's some scripture, and on the third day, wrestling tickets were sold or something. I think there was something like that. No,
I think I've been thinking about this, and this isn't the right time to introduce you to Cornette, but I think at one point we need to do an entire episode talking to you about Jim Cornette, who's become this sort of like this.
Sounds great.
I mean, if you love him, you love him.
Right.
I honestly feel like, and I don't mean this in a way that like. He seems to me like the Donald Trump of wrestling fans. And I don't mean that in a way that if you love Trump, you'll love him.
Right.
And if you hate Trump, you'll hate him. But there is a fair amount of crossover there.
That's you. Right.
But he's just kind of like this populist that like speaks his mind. And he's got a lot of just kind of like really hot takes that don't resonate well with a lot of people, which makes other people love those takes. But yeah.
Gotcha. Well, plus people, if people are looking for AEW hate, then they'll focus on it. People are looking for WWE hate, they'll focus on that. You know,
he and his co-host in particular despise AEW.
Oh wow!
It.
Yes.
So they're constantly talking trash. Like an AEW guy gets injured, they'll go on a whole diatribe about how AEW is not safe and they don't train the wrestlers properly. And then like a week later, literally Big E in WWE will break his neck in a match and they don't say peep other than hope you get well soon, buddy.
Of course. Right.
But I listen to him because he's funny. I don't listen to him all the time, but I like to check in because he's funny. And I will say that he's one of these guys that like, he makes good critiques often in the moment, but he's just got really bad kind of high level takes in my opinion. But we can get into him another time, but yeah, let's move on. The next big story, let's see what you guys think. WWE, and we all saw this because we all saw SmackDown. Triple H came out and introduced the new WWE Undisputed Championship belt. It says Undisputed Champion on the belt to Roman Reigns, presumably to replace the two belts that he's been carrying around, which together represent the Undisputed Championship. Tex, let's start with you. What do you think of the idea of merging these belts, and what do you think of the design choice?
So I think you have to, because you don't want three belts out there, and you don't want it gets all crowded when two people are holding this belt, someone else is holding these three belts. It's too many belts, and truly, to hate on the WWE, their whole belt system right now is kind of screwy, with the belts being on the wrong show and everything else. Now, the way it looks, I mean, they literally just put the same belt. It's the same belt, just a different color. I don't know what else they would have done with it. I mean, maybe if you wanted to make it like, hey, this is Roman's 1,000 day, put something in his symbol in the middle of it. But if you wanted to keep going, I understand why you wouldn't do that. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think it's fine.
Koltrane, I know this is your first exposure to WWE belts, really, in a meaningful
Yes.
way. But you
Well, the
might
thing-
not you might not be totally grasping the whole concept of what's going on with those belts. But I guess all you need to know is that he's got these two belts, and they're only ever challenged for together, so they're probably never going to split up. So they're making them into one belt. So what do you think?
Right. Well, first off, I wasn't aware. So it's been 1,000 days. I don't know if they reminded the audience
Well, they
throughout
lied.
the show.
They lied to the audience.
Yeah, did they? But I don't know if they ever told the audience how many days he's been a champion. I don't know if I was ever reminded of that throughout the entire 2 hours that Roman Reigns was a champion for so many days. I don't know. So this is new. So it's been like over 1,000. Huh? I
I
didn't know
think they
that from
reminded us
watching.
once for every day he's been champion.
Yes. Okay. Good. Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I thought the belt was a little underwhelming. I got to be honest, and I think it's because even like 3 or 4 episodes ago, you guys, I looked online that picture of that new WWE belt that was like full of diamonds and everything. It looked amazing, and I thought, is that no? It's a different belt. I mean, that belt looked incredible.
Yeah.
So then when I saw this, I found it very underwhelming. But again, my barometer, my bar was very high.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean,
I found it underwhelming.
judging what a belt looks like is always subjective, but
True.
Yeah, the belt that you saw a few weeks ago is basically the championship belt of Raw, and this is the championship belt of SmackDown.
Of SmackDown. Okay, gotcha.
I mean, I thought it was an awful belt. I think that the
Right.
belts that he's holding, this isn't just me being like hating on WWE. I think a lot of reasonable people agree these are ugly belts, and many people calling them some of the ugliest belts that they've made since like way back when they were like just like had a local tinsmith making them. But like
Yeah.
like these are just really ugly belts, and the story has always been that Vince McMahon wanted a belt where the WWE logo was all that was on the belt, because the WWE champion goes on Jimmy Fallon, goes on,
Right.
you know, they want to put the belt
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah,
So when someone's
yeah.
flipping through the channels, they see the belt, which to me, my reaction is like, yeah, I get it, but that sucks, right? Like if that's your goal, like if your ultimate strategy here to like propel yourself into the future is to catch, you know, people flipping through the channels late at night when they've got like chips on their underwear, like that is not the way to
Wow.
build your company. Like,
There it is. I'm liking this. Boots is firing back. I'm liking this.
But I have a hope. So here's what I think. I like what you were saying, Tex, and what I wish they would have done, because they've done this a number of times in the past, is given Roman Reigns a custom belt just for him that he would hold until he dropped the title. So they've done that with Stone Cold. I think they did that with John Cena. They've done that a few times. They might have done it with Edge, I'm not sure. But the idea is like, you are the champion, and we're building a belt that is themed around you, and that it is a special edition of the belt that only you will wear. And then when you lose the championship, we will bring back the previous belt or introduce a new one. So my hope is, even though I think that this was an awful design choice, my hope is that that's what this belt is. It is just a Roman Reigns belt. And the reason that I think that is because it says on it, undisputed champion. And in wrestling nomenclature, undisputed champion is what you call someone when you have a title versus title match, and then the titles are merged, and that person is called the undisputed champion. And then shortly after, you know, they change the title, like it's back, you know, it's now just the WWE Championship. So I think and hope that he's going to hold this belt and eventually drop it, probably at WrestleMania next year, probably to Cody Rhodes. And then at that point they will introduce a new design for the belt. But I think at this point the belts as they exist have become iconic to Roman Reigns, so they wanted to keep the same icon for Roman Reigns. That's my guess, and that's my hope.
I don't hate it, and like I said before, the belts are all messed up right now. They really need to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the tag team champions holding 4 belts. If
Yeah.
I'm tired of Raw Championship being on SmackDown. SmackDown's on Raw. It's all confusing and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
It seems like they're slowly but surely cleaning things up, but maybe don't want to do it all too quickly because it's
Makes sense.
like they introduced this new championship belt for Raw, and now they've like introduced this belt to Roman. So like whether that's a temporary belt or not, they have at least solved the two championship belts now, right? We now have two distinct championship belts for each brand. And Roman, I'm assuming as of like this week, is no longer going to carry those other two belts to the ring.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He'll
will.
just
He'll
have
all three.
You
no,
think
he'll
he'll
just right, or just have this belt that looks like it's from a Halloween shop costume that I wore when I was 8 years old. No, it's perfect. It literally looks like it's from that Halloween store. That like it looked cheap. It looked terrible. Yeah. I'm realizing I think I'm being too nice. Like this is wrestling, right? I'm being too nice. I thought the belt was terrible. I thought it looked awful. I was not in any way impressed. I thought it was terrible.
It's not good. But oh well. Let's my hope is that when he does lose is they're going to bring back the eagle wing design. That's what everybody wants. And the fact that they brought back like the big gold belt design for the other belt gives me hope. But I am maybe too much of an optimist, even for someone who is generally negative about WWE. So,
there you go.
But we'll see. All right. Well, on that note, I think it's time that we jump into the show proper. But before we do, I've made a couple notes here. I don't know that we got to go through all these, but I think it'd be a good idea. Whoa.
Sorry. I don't even know how that happened.
Wow,
sorry about
sound
that.
Pro dropped a.
Yeah. Sorry. There's a whole thing going on behind the camera you don't even want to know about.
Koltrane moonlights as a busboy, and he's got us on his phone right now.
All right, just hold on. I'll have it ready in a minute. Jeez, gosh. Sorry about that.
Okay, so
exactly.
all right, so I think we did this like way back when we kind of introduced you to AEW. We kind of talked about the basics a bit, and I don't think we need to do a whole episode on that because a lot of the basics have been introduced to you over the course of our show, but I think there's a couple things we need to touch on real quick, and I'm going to go through these. I don't want to say rapid fire, but let's go through these and we'll just talk about them if we need to. But the first thing is we know that WWE has two main shows. They've got Raw and they've got SmackDown, and that the idea is that these shows have a separate roster with crossovers from time to time, but it's meant to be the exception, not the rule. But they also have a developmental show called NXT, and you may have heard that come up before.
Yes.
NXT is kind of where their junior wrestlers are learning and trying things out, and then they sort of graduate at some point to WWE. And this has pros and cons. They have a whole system that they control, and they're able to like develop talent, see how they do, and if they do well, put them on the main show. They're also able to give this talent exposure to television. NXT is televised, so there's a lot of good things to it. There's downsides, in my opinion. One is that you've got an entire brand where essentially the entire roster is training under the same roof, which, in my opinion, leads to pretty homogenous wrestling style. But my other criticism is I don't watch NXT at all, and I don't really want to. I don't like the concept of televising people while they're developing. Maybe I will at some point if I have time. But often I'm told when a wrestler comes from NXT and they're not doing well, people say, "Oh man, you should have seen them in NXT." To which I say, like, well, they should have put them on the roster.
Right.
Kind of the opposite, kind of another side of the coin of what you were saying a couple of weeks ago about your criticism of AEW. Like, this is the big show. Well, the other side of that is if you guys guys are rocking developmental, what a shame that you're not putting them on the big show. So, Tex, I don't know. Do you have any NXT opinions? Do you watch it?
I have. There's a few. I don't watch it religiously or anything. Everyone that I talk to keeps saying it's the best show out of all wrestling.
I've heard this opinion too.
They have the best pay-per-views. They have the best wrestlers, and the ones I've seen that are like towards the top of the card are really good. And I am kind of shocked. Like, why are they not in the big boys yet? Yeah. There's some big names down there that I'm shocked aren't up yet.
Yeah, and there's been a history of names that they've dropped off NXT that
Adam Cole.
Adam Cole was NXT champion for a long time, and WWE never promoted him to the main roster, and now he's a big deal in AEW. So,
Oh, interesting. Huh.
yeah. Officially, so we've talked about this a number of times. Creative is run by Triple H officially, although Vince McMahon will give his input from time to time. We've talked about this, but there's generally this belief that Vince McMahon, who was solely in charge of creative for decades, was awesome in the 80s, okay in the 90s, and then has been kind of got worse and worse in his old age. And as he's become a reclusive, insane billionaire over the years, he's just lost touch. And ever since Triple H took it over, in many people's opinions, it got a lot better. And now we're in this sort of in-between phase where a lot of people are saying, well, it's better than it was under Vince, but we can tell that Vince is sticking his fingers in the pie right now. So we don't need to get into the specifics of that, but that's it. And then the final thing, I think this is going to be really important to our discussion, based on what you've said in the past, Koltrane, is WWE is generally scripted. There's a team of writers who are often brought in without having wrestling experience. They're hired because they're writers, and they write storylines, they pitch ideas, and they often script out the promos. Although I have read and seen on YouTube videos that the general consensus that Triple H is more lax on this and gives freedom to wrestlers to kind of riff a bit, and that this is generally appreciated by wrestlers because, generally speaking, wrestlers do not like to be scripted. They consider that kind of sort of, I don't know what the right word is, but it's kind of demeaning to some of them. So, yeah. And then what do we got here? WWE's Marvel of Wrestling. We've talked about that. One thing that I'm wondering if you noticed this. Did you notice a frequent use of the term sports entertainment when you watched SmackDown?
Right. Yes. Interesting. Yeah.
So Vince McMahon does not like the term wrestling basically anywhere except for when you say World Wrestling Entertainment. He calls his wrestlers sports entertainers. And when they say they're the best in all of sports entertainment, not in all of wrestling. So,
right, yes, and I would actually agree with that because watching WWE compared to AEW, it did seem much more like entertainment. I would say maybe than possibly wrestling. There was a lot more of the entertainment factor, a little bit more kind of like the fluff, the entertainment than actual wrestling.
Yeah,
that I noticed.
So. Yeah, and then the last couple things here is one is you saw a big, I think what most people would agree is a pretty big beat in the ongoing Bloodline storyline, which is the Roman Reigns family storyline that has been going on for well over a year at this point. Many people regard it as the best story in all of wrestling, including AEW fans. And what did I write here? Lovers will point to it. Lovers of WWE will point to it as the best story in all of wrestling. Critics will point to it as the only story in WWE worth paying attention to. But generally, most people agree that it's a great wrestling story. And then the last thing, the very last thing, because it totally came up, and I'm sure you're wondering about it. What the hell is Money in the Bank? What were these briefcases?
Well, let me. Here's my guess. It seems like a ladder match. I think you might have explained it, but then you got to reach up and grab the money on the top, and then whoever grabs it wins. So is it like a ladder match?
Yeah. So I think generally 6 wrestlers will be chosen to participate. There'll be a women's Money in the Bank match and a men's, and
right.
The briefcase will be suspended, and whoever gets it wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, which they then get to carry around with them, and they can challenge for any belt at any time, so long as there's a ref and a wrestling ring. So they can literally, I think we saw last year, was it Liv Morgan? She won the Money in the Bank match. And then later on in that same pay-per-view, after the women's championship match, she cashed in at the end of the match and won the championship off of the person that had just wrestled an entire match. So it's sort of like a wild card. If you win it, you can challenge for any title, anytime. It could happen when you're ready for it or not. And, it could be with 0 warning. It's totally up to the holder of the briefcase.
Right.
So,
and the best one is Seth Rollins did it at WrestleMania. So after the main event, he came out and took the belt away from Brock. So
yeah. My opinion on it's a cool gimmick, but I think it's really overdone. And I think that overall it has served to cheapen the world championship instead of strengthen it. But that's just my opinion. Other people think it's like the greatest thing ever. So,
right.
I like it.
So yeah, that's coming up. All right, let's get into the match. I think we got to start with Koltrane. We're all dying here. Koltrane, what are your overall impressions? What's the good? What's the bad? What's the ugly?
Holy cow. Well, this was crazy because I was really excited because this is WWE. And the very beginning, they had a little commercial, right? And they had a ton of these throughout the show. And it was like, then, now, forever. And it was awesome because it was like then. And like, those are my guys. Like, there's Macho Man, there's Rowdy Piper, there's like all the people that I grew up with, right? That I watched and loved now. And then here's like more of the Attitude Era you saw, you know, and then forever. So I thought that was great. So instantly I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like they got me. Like I'm hooked, right? So as a returning fan, they've got me right out of the gate.
That's awesome. We don't think much of that because that's at the beginning of every show they do. But
right, exactly.
It's cool,
but it's
cool
someone
that it spoke to you. Interesting.
Yes, it really did because that's like, oh, those are my guys. Like that's who I used to cheer for when I was like 8 years old. You know, getting pizza all over my face. So anyway, and then they did like the start of one of the past of Roman Reigns and his kind of one of 50 commercials that they did for him, showing his rise to the top, and which I thought was great. Because he is a name that I knew, but I had no idea who he was. I knew he was in Hobbs and Shaw. I assume he's a wrestler and he's important because he played The Rock's brother. And I'm like, this guy, I think he's important. I'm pretty sure he's a wrestler. So, but you got to understand, I know that sounds blasphemous. How can somebody not know who Roman Reigns is? I know. But if you haven't watched in 30 years, I know the name. I've heard of it. I don't know who he is. So it was kind of neat seeing his trajectory. Obviously seems like a great wrestler. I guess the spear, is that his move or something? The spear?
That's one of he's known for two moves. I think the spear, which there's a number of wrestlers who've used that over the years, and then the Superman punch, which is you the same finisher that Orange Cassidy has, only he calls it the Orange Punch. But,
gotcha.
Yeah, those are two big ones, right, Tex?
And he also has a guillotine.
Oh,
he likes to finish people with that. Those are his three big ones, though.
Yeah.
So I would say, like on the production side, super impressed because you've got the music, you've got the fireworks, you've got the explosions, you got all that great editorial, right? And then the show starts, music kicks in, everything's like, hello everyone, and you've got the big announcer guy. By the way, I didn't feel like the announcers really liked each other that much. I don't know, like I got kind of a weird vibe. Like
it's a new team. They're still
been
trying
around
to
for like
figure
a
it
year.
Yeah, but it's Pat. It's supposed to be Pat McAfee, but
they didn't quite like seem to gel. Like they were like announcers typically will like, you want to back each other up, right? Like, so if somebody messes up, you kind of back him up. You don't go like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, that was stupid. You know, like you want to kind of back each other up. But they go ahead.
Sorry, one kind of plays like the heel, and one kind of plays like the mark or the good guy.
Right.
And they're trying. That's how they're kind of playing it instead of being down the middle.
Sure.
Yeah, typical WWE announcing is you've got one guy that always loves every heel and defends them no matter what. And I think that I think it's been done really well in the past. I don't think it is done very well today in either of the announced teams. I will say that on Raw, the one guy, Corey Graves, he, in my opinion, is the strongest commentator in wrestling. But the other thing is you've been watching Dynamite, and in my opinion, their commenting is one of their strengths on Dynamite.
I really think they're fantastic. I mean, between the two, I would give the edge to Dynamite, to AEW on the commentators. I just would. Like, this is just, again, outside observer. There's no bias here. All right. There's bias from you two characters, right? Because, you know, but there's no bias here. So I would give the commentating to AEW without a doubt. I think AEW does a phenomenal job. So the show starts, you got the big music, you got the big promos, you got all the stuff, and it's super over the top. Like everything I thought WWE would be is to an extreme. Everything is to an 11. You know what I mean? In every way. They had, what was his name? Austin. He was the United States champion or
Austin
something?
Theory, yep.
Austin Theory, right? And this guy, you know, he's like the heel, you know, he's this big guy. He kind of puts the roids and steroids, you know, he's kind of, well, I mean, okay, hold on. Whoa. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that, he's on the creatine dream here. I'm not saying that in any way. HRT, yeah, you know me. But he was great. And then they introduced Pretty Deadly right after that. And it was, it was great. It wasn't, it was a different tone, a slight shift, from Austin, to Pretty Deadly. And the announcer said that they called Friday Night Smackdown, Friday Night Snackdown, which I thought was great. And then followed that with the Billy Ball Boys, or who were they?
Brawling Brutes.
Yeah, the Brawling Brutes, right?
You got Sheamus, and I never
Right.
remember the other two guys' names because it's really just Sheamus and a couple lackeys. But
Yes, but they got the bowler caps, the baseball bats. It was literally the cast of Snatch came running out into the ring. Like, here come the Bowley Boys, right? Let me get this straight. I was waiting for like Jason Statham to come running out. So that was extreme. And then kind of what followed. So it was a crazy thing where watching it now, after starting with AEW and watching this, let me break it down in a couple of different things. Okay, well, how about this? Okay, I don't want to just run right to judgment here.
Okay.
I have two metaphors to use. You guys pick which one. We got cotton candy or lemon meringue pie. What do you want? What do you prefer?
Lemon meringue pie.
All right, let's go with the pie.
Yeah,
All right, we're going pie. Okay. Lemon meringue pie. Lemon meringue pie. For those that don't know what lemon meringue pie is, it's a wonderful pie. But the actual substance, the meat of the pie, is quite small. It's just a little layer of pie. But on the top, there's just 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 feet of just fluff, just whipped cream. It's like it's the meringue, right? Now it's not 3 or 4 feet. It's probably 3 or 4 inches, but it's the majority of each bite is meringue. It's this cream. It's not the actual pie. All right. So the way I'm thinking of WWE is the pie is wrestling, and the meringue is all of the extra the extra craziness that is WWE. It's all the commercials that they play throughout that is taking up so much time, right? So we're not seeing wrestling. When they're doing all this Roman Reigns, March to 1,000 days, when we're doing all these, and then this happened, and then Ron Johnson and the champion of this, there were so many commercials, which was great to watch. You've got music, fluff, explosions, wonderful, but there's no pie. This is all meringue, right? It's all whip, it's fluff, right? It's wonderful, but there's no pie. Then I'm thinking, hey, it's time for some wrestling, and now there's like a Matt Tillman, or I forgot what his name was, like talk show.
Grayson Waller effect. I can't wait to give you my 2 cents on that. But
yes, in the middle of the ring, and once again, it's like a sit-down talk show. This is more meringue. This is more fluff. There's no wrestling here. There's none. It's just more talk, right? Now, let's get into the actual wrestling, right? The actual wrestling. Now, Shoe Boots made a comment earlier about how 4 matches, right? That's all there was.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but just to be
Please.
fair, this was a bit of an exception. I will say that generally speaking, WWE is lighter on matches than AEW. However, this
Yes.
was kind of a unique night in that this big Roman Reigns event was happening. So
Right.
normally you would probably see a little more wrestling, but I also don't think it was that far off of a typical night.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, Tex, because you've muted your mic out of pure anger. All right? Let me ask you this. The wrestling that you saw on SmackDown, the wrestling matches that you saw, that you witnessed, was that good wrestling?
I will say, I was going to say this after your big rant.
No, please.
This was one of the weaker shows. They do have a little time before the next pay-per-view, so they can't build too much yet. And they just came all the way from Saudi Arabia. So big names didn't wrestle.
Right.
And AEW only had 5 matches, so only one more.
All right.
But no, this was weaker on the wrestling side. Now, I think there was at least 2 really good matches. LA Knight was a good match. And Okay. And the OC Hit Row one wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
You're kind of struggling here, though, Tex. You're
But
kind of struggling a little bit.
The Theory one was okay, but the girl match wasn't great.
No, it was not.
They don't know what to do with Lacey Evans.
Right.
And it is more wrestling normally, and you'll see it later. But this was very promo heavy.
Yes, very promo heavy.
Very Roman heavy.
Yes. Now, which was good. Go ahead.
You won't get that often because you won't be there often.
Right.
Right.
His contract is that he has to show up like once a month. So a whole other issue that your world champion is like never on TV. But
so the thing about when I compare the wrestling between the two is when I watch AEW, and even the very first time I watched AEW, the first night, right? Remember when I talked about like these guys are talking and I don't know what they're talking about and they're not very good on the mic, but then they got into the wrestling and I was like, okay. But in AEW, in every single night of Dynamite, only Dynamite that we've watched, there are at least 3 to 4 moments where I go, whoa, when I'm watching it. There's a whoa moment, right? Now, that doesn't mean that somebody took a barbed wire chair to the face or anything like that, because I know a lot of people, well, because AEW is so violent. Now, by the way, it sounded like I'm leaning towards AEW. I'm not necessarily there yet. I'm just saying that when I watched AEW wrestling, the actual wrestling matches, there's 3 to 4, maybe 5 whoa moments of something extreme, a really great move, double flip off the turnbuckle, off the back, whatever, some kind of great whoa moment. I did not have, I had a whoa moment, but it was more watching WWE, but it was more of like a whoa like moment, not like a whoa, you know what I mean? So I just, the wrestling itself, and I went back and I watched the latest Dynamite as well. And in every wrestling show, of course, you're going to have moments that are great, moments that are not so great. But I was still watching Dynamite again, and I still had those whoa moments, those great flips, those great moves that were just incredible. And I didn't seem to find that with WWE in a lot of these moments. And also, too, with the females, too. I would say that the females, I think on WWE, at least what I saw on Smackdown, are not as strong as the females in AEW. AEW, they are like buffed up, ready to go, and they are hitting each other. Like it's major. They're doing some serious moves. In this one, it seemed very like, it felt very staged. It felt very like it just didn't have the impact for me at all. You know, with the female wrestlers as compared to AEW. So I would just say on the wrestling side, I have those whoa moments with AEW that I didn't quite seem to have with WWE as an outside observer.
Now, to be negative on WWE,
yeah,
I think one of the issues is the pay-per-view model or the Primo Live event is they save those whoa moments a lot of times for the monthly show, which I'm not saying is a good thing. I think it is a bad thing. And to defend the women, you saw 2 of the lower card wrestlers.
Got you.
You didn't see the bigger names.
Got you.
Actually wrestle.
Yeah, I would say I actually think that both Zelina Vega and Lacey Evans are promising wrestlers that WWE doesn't really know what to do with, would be my critique. But yeah, they are definitely lower card wrestlers. So to be fair, and this is the first time that Lacey Evans has even been on television, I think since March. So
oh really?
Yeah.
I think she just needs, like, this is gonna sound crazy, but like she just needs to put on like 20-30 pounds of muscle, you know, and then like, you know,
she's actually like, I don't know, I actually like her character. I think they might be, she's kind of this homage to Sergeant Slaughter. I don't know if you remember Sergeant Slaughter from the 80s. He was Hogan's nemesis at one point.
Oh wait, maybe I've got him mixed up then.
Lacey Evans was like the military one.
Oh no, not her. The other one. The other one was
Vega.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. No. The military one. No, she's got plenty of muscle. She's doing great. She puts on another. Yeah, that's gonna be a whole other thing.
Yeah.
No. I meant
Vega,
the other one.
She's a tiny thing. And
that's who I meant.
Where she excels is in her high flying stuff, which wasn't really on display. But here's just for fun. Here's a little aside. Can you guess which AEW roster member is her real life partner? I'll give you a hint. It's a guy, but there's a guy, a prominent figure on the AEW roster is Zelina Vega's real life. I don't know if they're married, but they've been partners for a very long time.
Bandito?
It's not Bandito.
Oh, it's not Bandito. Oh, I thought I might have it. I thought I might have it with Bandito.
I don't think you'd ever guess it.
No, who is it?
Malachi Black.
Oh my God, what? From House of Black?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no, you're right. I did not see that coming. All right, no, I did not see that coming. But I felt that overall the wrestling just seemed a little bit more lackluster, a little bit than AEW is, and I know that there's WWE fans out there right now saying, Koltrane, you're crazy. You don't know how amazing this is, how great it is, and it could be that you've just been watching WWE for so long that you don't realize what it actually is. I'm just saying.
I agree with you. This was not a great episode. I would like to for wrestling. I
Yes.
would like to ask you, what'd you think of LA Knight?
LA Knight seemed he seemed cool, he seemed nice. Again, this is a first view, right? The first impression. So I don't know the history, I don't know, but I didn't see Star. I wasn't floored. In fact, I don't hardly remember the guy, which is not a good sign.
In LA Knight's defense, though, like he did not cut a promo that night, he's amazing on the mic, and
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And that's a big part of it, right? So yeah, so that's so hey, you know what? I got some chat room kind of agreeing with me here a little bit. I'm just saying. I might have some backup a little bit.
So
a little bit.
I'm really interested in this idea that Tex says this wasn't a good. I thought this was a great night for you to get introduced to WWE, because I do think that generally speaking, their wrestling, I don't want to say it's bad. I've seen bad matches in WWE. I've seen bad matches in AEW. I'm not here to say that it sucks, but I think you just said it best with that whoa thing. Like these guys in AEW, they give it 110% every night, and they don't always pull it off, but the effort's there. And I just don't always feel that in WWE, and I don't want to blame the wrestlers. And here's why I don't want to blame the wrestlers, because a lot of wrestlers who've not done well in WWE go over to AEW and effing rock it, right? Like
Right.
Malachi Black's one of them. So like, it's not the wrestlers.
Yeah, and I was thinking too when I was watching the Billy Bole Boys match or whatever, that I'm like, guys, these guys look tired. Like they just looked like they looked gassed. They just looked tired. And I don't know. I didn't have that same oomph. And Tex, your point being is they saved the whoa matches for the pay-per-views, right?
Yes.
Well, I would say that with AEW, they had those whoa moments, and then the pay-per-view was also a double extra whoa. You know,
Right.
there were those whoa moments there. I think that your job, I think what I think might be possibly happening here is that WWE has become more about the show and not so much about the wrestling. So I think what Tony Khan was looking to do, he succeeded in that. What Tony Khan's idea is that he loved wrestling when he was a kid, right? So my age, right? Although I'm, 23, 24 years old. Anyway.
Yeah.
But he loved wrestling when he was a kid, and he wanted to bring wrestling back, and that's what AEW is. So for me, what it appears, now again, this is only one episode in, right? This is just first impression, right? I could completely change my mind. But it seems that the focus is the show and not the wrestling. The focus is the meringue and not the pie. You know what I mean? So that's what I think Tony Khan has succeeded, is that it's about the wrestling and not so much about the show. So I actually appreciated AEW more, believe it or not, watching WWE. And to say something that's like super crazy, this is going to sound nuts. But I know this would be true. Had we started on this episode of Smackdown for my first time watching wrestling ever, I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. I would probably not be watching wrestling at all. And the only reason is that, like I said with Tony Khan earlier, right? AEW was similar to what I watched when I was a kid, about the wrestling and the foundation of it and recreating those great moments that were there in wrestling, right? And that's why I loved it. I was like, oh my God, wrestling is just as great as it was 30 years ago. But if I started with this one, with the talk show thing in the middle of the ring, with all the promo stuff, with all the commercials. Like, check out the reality show of this and watch what happens when Sergeant Smithers, falls off a wagon, like, or whatever, all these like crazy promos and commercials. It seems so commercialized and so whatever. I would have been just like, what has happened? What has happened to wrestling? This is an abomination. There's no, now I don't want to say well, I said abomination. I'm just telling you, it was not wrestling. It was the big show. It had become something completely different than what it was when I was a kid. So I know that sounds crazy, but that's just initial thoughts. So I think Tony Khan has succeeded.
So a couple things that I think
Thoughts?
that we should bring up, and I don't know if this is in WWE's defense or not, but these are just things that should be known. First of all, Pretty Deadly is brand new to the roster. I believe this is their second match ever. They are NXT graduates. So
nice.
They've been around in NXT for a while. I have not seen them until now. My personal take was it was like really odd that they randomly teamed with Theory. Like, they seem to have nothing in common except that they're heels, which is always kind of an odd choice to me. That like Theory and
Pretty Deadly are heels?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Remember they like actually like had the pin and then they tagged Austin Theory in to let him have the pin?
Yeah. Kind of anticlimactic.
But it also just didn't make sense because there's like no pre-existing relationship between these people.
Right.
So that was kind of weird. But I do think that they're entertaining overall. Here's what's really funny is I don't really watch NXT, but I did actually see their last appearance on NXT because it went viral and I watched it. Tex, did you see how they were written off of NXT?
No, maybe.
They were killed.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They were literally locked up in a trunk, and there was a video of their rivals driving them in a truck, and they were thrown into the ocean where they drowned. And
What?
And then they showed up on WWE Smackdown.
Of course.
Which you could make the argument of like, okay, but they have different, like, to me it's like, okay, we know this is fake, but like kayfabe is kayfabe. We have to have some semblance of continuity here.
Right.
Especially when like it's very common for other NXT wrestlers, their story from NXT to carry over into WWE. And for WWE wrestlers who graduated from NXT into WWE to come back and visit from time to time as like a big pop. But no, Pretty Deadly is kayfabe dead in NXT, and they're bright new young stars on SmackDown kayfabe. It's so weird.
Impact does this a lot. Anytime someone joins the WWE or AEW, they'll just kill them all. And
it was such a missed opportunity too, because like the way that their story ended on NXT is that they were chained up, thrown in a box, and thrown over the bridge into the water to die. When they were first, and I don't know for sure, but I think current NXT has a storyline going now where the cops are investigating these guys for the murder. So like,
What?
of the wrestlers who are on SmackDown.
Oh my God.
But here's how
moment.
here's how they could have saved it. This is what I'll tell you exactly what they should have done. The first time Pretty Deadly came out on SmackDown, when they announced and they come out, they should have come out head to toe soaking wet with broken chains hanging from their arms. It would have saved the whole thing.
Right. That's insane. I can't believe they were literally murdered. Like that's so crazy. Right. Let's just have them get murdered. Right. That's so insane.
I think this is why people love NXT. I think they just like are really willing to do anything that's wild and crazy. It's very experimental. But
I just can I ask Texas something? Tex, buddy. Okay, now Tex. You know I love you, man. All right,
yeah.
Tex.
I don't love you no more, but
I know. Well, that's the thing. You look like you got hit by a truck. No, okay. So now listen. Let me break this down. Let me just break this down just super quick. Do you think that WWE is more focused on the show than necessarily the wrestling, or am I completely way off there?
I would agree with you.
Okay.
I think once you get to the pay-per-views, which I agree is a bad model, that's when it's 100% wrestling. And it's match after match. And I think the two pay-per-views ago, even she said, one of the best pay-per-view match shows ever. Backlash
Oh,
was.
the Backlash was
It
phenomenal.
was amazing. But
Yes.
which is a good point from you as a new viewer. You come in and see this, you don't like Roman, you don't know him. This isn't going to make you watch next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my opinion one of the downsides of having 12 pay-per-views a year, right?
I
Like
agree.
that you're constantly any long-term storyline that you want to tell that lasts longer than 4 weeks, well, you actually have to disappoint people in the pay-per-view by not paying it off to build it longer. And any other story, you're constantly feeling the need to build it up. And yeah, I don't know. I do think so what I wanted to kind of get at there is that also we had other Grayson Waller is a brand new NXT graduate. So I guess his talk show, The Grayson Waller Effect, was
Right.
big on NXT. I've seen it twice now on SmackDown. I think it's awful. Like I feel like they need to like stop doing this immediately before they end up canning this guy, because he must be promising if they graduated him. Like, this is not good, and this is like really bad. You've got Zelina Vega and Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans is a relatively inexperienced wrestler. She's been around for a while, but they keep rebooting her character. It's like they don't know what to do with her. I actually think that when I first, like 2 years ago, started getting back into wrestling and going back and watching stuff, I think I watched the first, I don't know if it was the first or the second, but the first ever Women's Royal Rumble, because I was kind of like, oh my God, they do a Women's Royal Rumble now. That's crazy.
That's awesome.
And it was on YouTube. I'm going to go watch it. And she was one of the first people that came out, and she had that it. Like, she was awesome. She was like, before she even entered the ring, like she had this sort of like Southern Belle character back then, and she came out and she like put her hand out for some guy to kiss her hand, and then she like
Nice.
pulled it away before he could, and just was like, ew. Like, she was just like a great heel. She had
Yeah.
stage presence. She was a good wrestler. And then as I've like watched, she keeps like showing up for like 3 weeks and then disappearing for 6 months. They keep rebooting her character. They don't know what to do with her, and I don't get it. I think like she's actually a really promising wrestler that just is not being well written, and I don't know what to do about that. I love that she's doing this Sergeant Slaughter homage. Like, you can tell, if you're a fan, you can tell that she's going back and watching the tapes, because she's not just like wearing a Sergeant Slaughter outfit. She is saluting the way that he used to salute, right?
Yeah, I thought she was great. Like, I really liked her character and all that stuff. I wish the wrestling was a little bit better, but I thought, like, overall, I think she did a great job.
And I think her wrestling would be better if they'd be putting her in shows, right? Like, she's
Yes.
Zelina Vega is another one that she's recently had a very big opportunity. She had a big match at a recent pay-per-view, but other than that, she barely ever wrestles.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, when I've seen her do some pretty awesome high-flying stuff. So I don't know what they're doing with her there.
Yeah.
She's more
Well,
of a
that's like the
manager.
thing. She's so tiny. So you're right. Like you were saying about Darby with AEW. If you're a smaller wrestler, then you got to be the high flyer. You got to be, running around. So
Yeah. Oh, Iron Grudge in the chat. I forgot about this. Yeah. Lacey Evans was in real life a Marine. So
Oh,
the,
wow.
So the character also fits that part of her as well.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, Montez Ford and LA Knight. Montez Ford is a tag team guy. I think everyone knew as fans that LA Knight was going to win this match because he is way overdue for a push. I don't know if you kind of picked it up from the audience, but they actually booed Montez Ford and cheered LA Knight. And Montez Ford is the babyface and Knight is the heel. People have wanted for LA Knight to get a push for so long now that I would be willing to predict. I don't even know who the rest of the members are, but I'm going to predict that he'll be the fan favorite at the Money in the Bank match, that people will cheer for him to win.
I imagine if Cody's not in it, which it doesn't look like he will be, LA Knight will win it. To talk about Ford real quick, the Street Profits. I love Ford, and I really think the Street Profits need to break up, because I think he, in a year or two, could be a major star. He's just
I've heard people say this. Yeah.
I think tag team is kind of holding him back, which I like the other guy too, but he won't be as big as a star as Ford.
Yeah. So, but anyways, what I kind of wanted to get at, Colt, is that like between the talk show and the matches, you had a lot of relatively inexperienced talent on the show tonight.
Yes.
And
right.
And I think that's important because WWE is capable of putting out great matches. they just don't generally. The people that generally put them out were not wrestling this on SmackDown this week. And
this reminds me, when I was younger, my brother watched the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Good show.
And he had said, you have to watch Buffy. It's the greatest show on television. You have to watch this. And I was like, what are you talking about, Buffy the Vampire Slayer? He's like, no, it's great. Trust me, it's great. And I sat down and I watched an episode and it was awful. And then I called him the next day and he said, oh no, you watched like the worst episode of the whole season. Trust me, it's really, really good. That was just a really bad one.
Don't get me wrong. I'm just
seeing some similarities here.
I'm not here to defend WWE. I'm just trying to be fair. I think the show stood on its own as a good representation of what WWE is these days.
Right.
And I don't think it was very good. I think there was. I mean, your meringue. I can make some guesses as to how your cotton candy metaphor would have went.
Yes. It's cotton candy. I'm just gonna say it, man. It's so many colors and lights. It's blues and greens or whatever. And then you take a bite of it, and what happens? It melts instantly in your mouth, and there's nothing there. It's all fluff. There's nothing there. It just melts away. It's gone. It's gone.
I want to know how you felt about the Roman, the last.
Good question. So you gotta. And it's interesting. I'm really interested to hear your perspective because this story has played out and had many big moments, some of the biggest moments in all of wrestling over the last 2 years. And here you are walking in 3/4 of the way through the story, I guess. I don't know. Who knows when it's going to end. But what do you think?
Well, I would say, and also too, I know what you're saying, that this might have been more of a fluff show. It's not as much wrestling. And like I said, I'm not passing complete judgment. This is just first impressions, right? Just first impressions. And I'm excited to watch next week and get into it and all that stuff. So it's going to be great. The Roman Reigns stuff I thought was actually really cool. I thought they did an excellent job as far as establishing that. The kick to the face earlier, it's like, what are you doing? When they showed one of the many promos leading up, it's like, this is our time, and all that was really cool. And the big music and all that stuff leading up to it in the end. And what I also liked was these guys were standing toe to toe with Roman, they were just as tall and just as big kind of as Roman Reigns. Like the Usos, that's what they're called.
The Usos.
Usos, yeah.
Usos.
Yeah, so I was really impressed. So I did like this bloodline story. I thought that this is obviously in fact, for the night, this was kind of like the only story, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of the problem. Yes, right? So but here's the thing. When I went back and I watched AEW on this Dynamite, now we're only watching Dynamite, I saw all these different characters and I knew all of their different stories. Each one has a different arc, a different story. Blackpool Combat Club, there's Orange Cassidy, there's Darby. Oh, right, there's Jungle Boy. I know what's going on with him. Each one, and even Bandito, who's just on his way up, who's gaining in popularity. Even with the Blackpool Combat Club, Lamar or something, he's becoming much more popular now. He's doing a much better job. Anyway, the point of what I'm saying is, these are all side characters that all have side stories. It's not Lamar. I'm saying the name wrong. You got to understand. I'm also he's
Claudio.
There's on the Blackpool.
I can't figure out which of the four Lamar is.
It's the smaller guy.
Wheeler Yuta.
Yuta. Look, Lamar and Yuta sound exactly the same. So it's obvious how, I got that mixed up, right? But the point of what I was saying was these are all different minor, you could say. Some are major characters, some are minor characters, but they all have developed stories, right? And then you've got the Statlander, you've got the Adam Cole, you've got the Chris Jericho. With this, for the whole night, again, this is just first glance, there was really only the Roman Reigns bloodline story. But again, I don't know these other characters. Maybe there's more of a story to Sheamus from the Billy Boys. Maybe there's more to him. Maybe there's more that I just don't know. I mean, Tex, please tell me all about Sheamus and his amazing backstory.
Well, he's really white. Perfect.
Excellent. Well, by the way, he did seem to be a crowd favorite, by the way. The crowd really seemed to like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that I think that and I'm only saying this based on what was mentioned earlier, is that there's a story about that maybe the bloodline story, greatest story in all of wrestling, right? Great. But some are saying that it might be the only story in WWE. So that's what I just wonder if that's kind of the case a little bit. So But I thought it was great. I honestly, as a first time viewer, I thought they played it really well. I thought the choreography of it was really well. I thought they did an excellent job. And like the double turn at the end, I thought was great. I thought I really enjoyed that part. I thought that was excellent. And it was teased like throughout the whole night. Like it was crazy.
And Tex,
it was great.
What was your take on the Usos? Well, at least one of them finally.
It was when Jimmy palmed his face, I lost my shit. Because see, you don't get this, Koltrane. Roman does this all the time to everybody. He just pushes their face. He's a big bully, and to finally see someone do it to him, that was my oh my god moment.
And this is his family. Like everyone there's family.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And like I knew Solo was probably not going to stay with the Usos, but it just that storyline is so good. And you're right. Right now, it's the only storyline on the card besides Bianca and Asuka. But they're in this phase right now because we did just have a draft. Well, they're starting to build stories. It's just taking them a little long, and you just got the bad episode for that. But they're building the Money in the Bank so you can get to these. Then after they get the competitors, then that story will start developing. I think Money in the Bank's over a month away still.
Nice.
So hopefully the stories start building. But the bloodline is the main story.
Certainly of SmackDown. And I think that for next week, we talked about this before the show. What we're going to do for next week is we're going to assign Koltrane to watch Monday Night Raw, which airs tomorrow.
I was like, man,
are you pre-apologizing?
I should have picked Raw last week.
Is this another Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Raw wasn't bad last week.
So, I mean, I personally think that I would guess that you're going to connect better with Raw. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think that the overall, like, it feels to me like Roman Reigns is on SmackDown and everybody else that has a good story going right now is on Raw. And that's how they sort of balanced it out. Like Cody Rhodes is awesome. Seth Rollins is awesome. The whole Judgment Day thing is really cool. Rhea Ripley, I think she's awesome. And yeah, we'll see. But it is a 3-hour show. So
I'm sorry, excuse me?
3-hour show. So if you thought there was a lot of meringue on SmackDown.
Right.
I promise more than 4 matches.
I promise more than 4.
I won't promise more than 5 though.
Exactly. Right. It's kind of a like 80-20 ratio, right? 80% meringue, 20% pie.
Now, here's a bad thing, maybe. It might be a bad thing, Koltrane. The views for SmackDown, I know it doesn't calculate everything, but it was 2.4 million, which is the highest it's been in a long time. People like Moraine, and the people really like it.
They do.
So,
absolutely. No, and from a marketing perspective, and you're absolutely right, Tex, is that you're giving the people what they want. Even the matches themselves, if you notice, very quick cuts. Boom, boom, boom. A lot of times I could hardly tell really what was going on. It's cut a lot quicker, a lot faster. They seem to have more of like an in-action camera in the ring than they do on AEW. I don't particularly like it because I can't really see the match as well. And I think it's because they're trying to hide bad wrestling. But anyway, but it's moving quick. You know what I mean? It's moving along. So, but you're right. Now, here's the thing. Think about this. WWE has been around forever, right? Yeah. They've got that establishment. These young people, they grew up watching WWF probably at the time, and then now WWE and whatever. But AEW, there's going to be people that are growing up watching that, right? And I'm just saying that AEW, I don't think hasn't been around even half the time of WWE. I'm just saying, give AEW some time. Tell me what's going on.
I think AEW is in a very weird place right now. The honeymoon phase is over.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
now
it's a 4-year-old company. AEW's been around 4 years.
4 years.
Yes. but
WWE's been around since the 1960s.
forever. So I think AEW, if they're really going to keep afloat and grow as a business, they really got to figure out their next step because they got to do something. And maybe Collision is the right answer. I don't know, but they can't just keep the same pace because the same pace isn't making them. The ratings aren't going up. The seats aren't going up. The seats they're not selling out anywhere.
No,
Not even Wembley.
they're not. I think AEW is in a really unfortunate position that they're too big for small arenas and they're too small for big arenas.
I agree.
So either they take the small arena and leave money on the table, or they take the big arena and get criticized on Twitter by Jim Cornette fans for having empty seats.
The problem is they're paying a lot of money.
They have a lot of money.
Right, but is it how long until? And I don't know the answer to this. Until the dad feels like we're wasting money and not gaining the money. And I don't know the answer.
Oh, Tony Khan's dad? I don't know. Tony Khan has been asked and he says that the company is profitable. So what does that mean? It's not a publicly traded company, so he doesn't have to tell us anything. He doesn't have to be honest with us, which in my opinion is a strength of the company. I don't know. It's also hard to tell because I do think that like AEW, this is just total me thinking this. I don't have any proof of this, but I think that the profit margins are much lower on AEW and that is purposeful. WWE is a publicly traded company with a lot of very, very wealthy executives at the top. This is a corporation, like many corporations in this day and age, is funneling money up to the top. AEW is a passion project by a guy who loves wrestling and who insists on paying what is said to be WWE equivalent salaries with lower expectations. Like you perform once a week, right? Like WWE, those guys, like AEW does these house shows from time to time. They did a batch this weekend, but generally speaking, if you're a WWE wrestler, you're doing 1 to 2 untelevised shows every week in addition to your responsibilities to be on television. Like they're busy. So
I just got to say one thing too is Tex, you made a great point. And you're exactly right. Tex made a great point. And he said too that like for WWE, the ratings are up, the tickets are selling. It is more about the show probably than the wrestling, but that's clearly working. You know, it's playing to that audience, you know, and having all of those commercials in that promo and not so much wrestling, that's still it's quick, it's moving. You know, you've got visual. There's a very unlikely chance someone's going to look away. You know what I mean? Or go check their phone. They're going to continue to watch because no one's watching it really on television anymore. So they're playing to the audience and they're doing it beautifully. And I think that the reason I was saying had I started with this versus AEW is that it looks so different to me than how I watched it 30 years ago. That it would have been too jarring for me as a first time viewer, as an older viewer, being 23, 24 years old.
Yeah.
So I think that AEW was an easier. It actually worked out beautifully as far as an easier kind of step in because it was similar to how wrestling used to be. So I think to Tony Khan being a passion project who loves wrestling, mission accomplished. I think that's what he's done with AEW. The question is, what is more successful? This might be this new monster that this is what wrestling needs to be. It's not so much about the wrestling, but more about the show. And that's what's selling to audiences. That's what's selling tickets. And if you're good with that, then great. You know,
I do want to bring up one thing that you just said, Colt, which is people don't watch wrestling on TV anymore.
Yeah.
Why do we care about the ratings then?
Because it's a great thing for fans of one organization to use to go after the other.
I agree. I think that SmackDown. You said. I think Tex said they had this crazy rating this last week. So a lot, 2.4 or 2.5 million people watched it, to which I say, well, 2.4 or 2.5 people who watch TV watched it. How many people on the internet are watching to me, we're never going to know how close these two companies are because I would guess that that by far the majority of all wrestling viewers are not being accounted for in these ratings wars because they're watching it online. And so is AEW really doing that bad? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. And when I say doing that bad, by the way, they're like doing really well. It's just that they're in the shadow of this monster. This like I don't know what like the market cap value is of WWE versus AEW, but I would venture to guess that AEW is probably in the 10 to 15% size of WWE as a company. So
Yeah.
And I hate to constantly bring that up as like as a defender of AEW, but I think it's an important thing to always keep in perspective when you're comparing these two companies. And at the end of the day, like I love wrestling, and I'm critical of WWE, but I don't come from a point of just hating WWE and wanting them to
Yes,
fail.
exactly.
My argument is like, as someone who loves what AEW is doing, I want WWE, and my hope is that under Triple H this happens. I want WWE to swing back to say, no, it's more about the wrestling. We don't need this much meringue.
Right.
We're always going to have more than everybody else because that's our piece of the pie. But it's gone way too far, and I think they really need to pull it back. I hope that Collision does solve a problem for AEW in that they've got way too many people and not enough time to tell their stories. I think that AEW is going to look markedly different a year from now, and I hope the same is true of WWE, but I don't really see a reason to think that with WWE.
Yeah, great points.
I think it is a good thing that they're kind of different too, because sometimes you want the meringue, sometimes you want the pie.
Yeah,
And so it's good to be able to have both.
and there are great, I think, an interesting about this is my opinion on WWE's current storyline. I think that they're at a point right now where the majority of their upper card has become stale. They've been around for a long time. They're not. They need to either reinvent themselves, or maybe their time at the top of the card is up, which isn't something to be ashamed of. We talked about Sheamus. This is a former world champion who's now doing 3-man tag teams as an enhancement talent. But he's a great wrestler. But he's been at the top of the card for a long time, and I think it's tough to get people to buy in to the idea of him headlining a pay-per-view these days because he's done it all for so long. And part of this is WWE's fault because they went through periods of just hot potatoing this belt. Everyone's had the belt for a bit, and sure, in the moment that might have been excited, but now they're paying for it in that like it's not really exciting for any of these guys to have a title shot because they've all had the title before.
Right. Interesting.
So we'll see what happens. It is a time of a lot of new talent coming in. I suspect we're going to see a lot of wrestlers let go over the coming months from WWE, which is always unfortunate, and I don't wish that on anybody. But the fact that they've brought in so much NXT talent in the last month just suggests that to be the case. So, but there is really good wrestlers in WWE, and I don't want to take away from that. I think LA Knight is very promising, but I think like Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, like these guys, at some point we're going to go and watch their Hell in the Cell match. Like these guys rock
That's awesome.
on like an AEW level. And,
Right.
And so it's there. It's just hard to find sometimes. And I guess that's where I stand on that.
It was good. It was
Yeah.
good. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, just my last thought. Scissor Lord in the chat, and I'm going to hope that name is from being a fan of the Acclaimed. But Scissor Lord in the chat is saying that AEW needs a streaming service, which I agree. I think that one thing that is holding them back, yeah, like WWE, I don't know how it works down there. You tell me, but I know up here, like they air the show. But then if you want to watch it on the WWE network, you got to wait like 2 weeks. Like you can't go to the WWE network to watch the show. You got to watch it on whoever's providing it. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed unless that channel has a good streaming option for you later.
Yeah, I'm able to watch it a day later on Hulu. That's how I watch it.
Okay. We have a channel here called Sportsnet that carries all the WWE stuff, and they've got a great website. They'll hold it for you can watch it on demand for up to a week after it airs on their website. So that's great. But the TSN channel that carries AEW sucks. So like it's really tough for me to watch AEW. Anyways, I'll be going on about. It's just a teaser for my new podcast talking about the difficulties Canadians have watching American content. It's going to be
Yes, perfect.
big podcast, I think.
Huge. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great.
All right. Well, we should probably start closing things up. Let's get some final thoughts. I think I've kind of given my final thoughts on where WWE's at. I do think that Raw is, outside of Roman Reigns, I think Raw is a much stronger product, but it's
Nice.
diluted with the 3-hour runtime. So it'll be interesting to see what you think. Tex, do you have any final thoughts / things you want to say to Colt to get to prepare him for Raw?
Well, I want to start off by saying we're not friends anymore.
Oh, Tex! No.
I thought we were gonna go in this tag team and him. I was so excited for this episode.
I
And
know.
Now I'm giving this episode a thumbs down.
Wait, us
Hey,
or
we can
us or
rally.
SmackDown?
Now I will say this on Raw, there is a title match for sure this Monday, so we're guaranteed at least one good match.
That's awesome.
And he brought a good point. There is a lot of bigger names, more story relevant names going on right now, and I'm excited to see what you think about Raw. 'Cause if you don't like Raw either, well, we're in trouble.
Yeah, then we got real problems. Yeah,
We become the AEW podcast.
no. Don't worry. I was really excited, and I still am about WWE. It was awesome to watch it, and like I said, like right at the beginning, then, now, forever. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm in. You know, they totally got me. It's WWE, man. It's just classic. It's got that foundation. It's got that. I want to love it. I want to love it. That's the thing.
I would
I
agree with
want
that.
to love it. Yeah, more than anything. That's what I want. That is my desire. I'm not going into this not why. I want to love it. So I'm really looking forward to now switching over, checking out some Raw action, and trust me, man. I mean, Tex, if anything to take down Boots. All right. I mean, are you kidding me? All right. I mean, come on. Right. That's the ultimate goal here. So
Did
no.
you notice the biggest pop was when Triple H came out? An old school guy. They went
Yes.
crazy for Triple H.
It's awesome that you got to see Triple H. He's,
Yes, that was awesome.
he's one of
Yeah.
my all-time favorites for sure.
He
Yeah.
doesn't get the credit he deserves. He helped make all the big names.
I think he gets the credit he deserves.
I-
Did you see? Were you watching SmackDown?
No. Well, but I'm talking about like outside of like the WWE, because he helped make Stone Cold, The Rock, all of them. They all needed a heel, and
Yeah.
that's your guy.
Yeah.
He was the guy for all of
He
them.
was the ultimate heel of a number of years for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, he's again that kind of legend.
Yeah.
That known name that's been around, and I did know him, so which was great. So yeah, it was fun, man. So I'm really honestly looking forward to Raw. It's gonna be great, and we'll see how it is, man. We'll see how it is. I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, just a couple show notes. We're going to, like I said, be talking about Raw next week. However, Colt, you are free to watch whatever you want. If you want to continue, if you want to give SmackDown another chance this week, if you want to keep watching Dynamite, I am interested to see what you feel motivated to watch as we go on. And yeah, we'll see what happens there. But we're going to introduce Raw. And as luck would have it, that will actually bring us the week after to the debut of Collision. So we're going to watch Raw for this week. We're going to watch Collision for next week. And then we'll have finished a complete tour of arguably the 4 big shows of wrestling. And then from there, we're going to have maybe a week or 2 off. And I've got a couple ideas of what we're going to do. I did receive some emails from some folks that listen to this that would like to be on the show. We're talking about that and seeing if we can see what we can fit where. So we'll reach out as soon as we can. But yeah, I'm excited. And then the plan is, as we talked about last week, but for those of you that might not have heard, we are going to, after this sort of introductory tour, after Money in the Bank, or maybe starting with Money in the Bank, we have to decide that. We're going to watch WWE specifically the same way that we watched AEW leading up to SummerSlam. So we're going to give WWE a really fair shake to prove itself to Koltrane, leading up
100%.
to one of its second biggest pay-per-view of the year, second only to WrestleMania. So yeah, that's going to be the show. If you want to write the show, You can email wrestlinglosers@gmail.com. You can tweet at me at the Shoeboots. I think my DMs are open, but you can just tweet at me if not. And other than that, I think that's gonna do it for us. Thanks for listening, everybody. We really appreciate it. And standard podcast fare. If you could give us a 5-star review, that'd be great. If you can't, well, I don't know what to tell you. That's a pretty easy thing to do. If you've listened to this episode for this long, if you're hearing this at the end of the show, clearly you have it in you to give us a 5-star review. But whatever. Tell your friends all that crap. And until next time, that's going to do it for me, for Colt, for Tex. Later, losers.